Okay, cool. So this is what Rhino looks like when you first open it up. Oh, by the way, we're going to be doing like a pretty simple massing model of a building that is similar to my hall, but not exactly like my hall, just because we don't have the specific dimensions and all that. So it's just going to be like inspired by my hall. But so yeah, this is what Rhino looks like when you open it up. As you can see, you have 4 different viewports, top, perspective, front, and right. Usually I do all of my 3D modeling in perspective, but then I also use top, front, and right to kind of check that, to make sure that everything is aligned and at right angles and all of that fun stuff. You can change these by like kind of clicking this arrow and then going set view, and you can set it to a bunch of different ones. So to start, I just double click on perspective over here so that it just shows me that one viewport, sorry. And it brings me to kind of the model space. To zoom in and out, just use your the scroll on your mouse, and then you can kind of rotate and pan around using just holding the right click button down. And then to move, I hit shift, the right click, and I just move around like that. It's a little bit different if you're on a Mac, but that's what it's like when you're on a Windows computer. So Rhino's a 3D modeling software, and you can use it for like small scale things like jewelry or furniture, but you can also use it for like large scale things like urban planning at like the scale of a city. And so you have this kind of origin grid, but once you start building pretty big things, that becomes like you kind of don't even see it, it becomes so small. So also about Rhino, there's all of these little like tools on the side and on the front, but you can type everything in the command bar, which is really nice because if you forget what a command is called, you can kind of just like type it in and all of these different suggestions will pop up. So to start off, I'm going to go and run the units command. And so this one shows that it's in millimeters, but you can change it to basically anything. I'm just going to keep my millimeters because I like to use millimeters. Okay, so we're going to start off by creating kind of the outline of, I'm just going to minimize that. Just kind of like the outline, the floor of my hall. So based off of like information online, what's like the square footage and all of that stuff, I'm going to say that it's roughly 35 meters by 45 meters. Oops, 35 meters. So let me backtrack, explain a little bit. I clicked the rectangle over here and I just placed it anywhere, and now it's asking me for the corner lengths. So I'm going to say 35 meters by 45 meters. And so what's nice about Rhino is that even though I set my document units to millimeters, I can put basically whatever I want, whatever units in the command bar, and it'll be those units. So, which is really nice because sometimes you want to work in millimeters, but then a lot of construction things are in inches and feet. So yeah, so this is going to be our floor plate, and I'm going to go ahead and set up my layers and things. So if you can see on this side, you have a properties tab that tells you like all about your geometry, and there's also a layers panel to organize your layers. There's also a few others such as like rendering. We're not really going to go into that though. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to create a new layer using this button over here, and I'm going to call this floor plate. And then I'm going to change the color by clicking over here and going to like, I don't know, a fun orangey color. And I'm going to change this rectangle I'm gonna just select it and then change the layer from default to floor plate. Also, I'm just gonna pause now and ask, does anyone have any questions, or am I going too fast? Do you want me to review anything, or how's it going? You can just type in the chat or speak loud, whatever you feel.
It's good. All good.
Okay. Do you guys have you guys used Rhino before, or what is your kind of like experience with it?
I haven't used it before,
but it's good. Okay. Sounds good. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna keep going then. So now that we have this kind of rectangle to outline our floor plate, we're gonna make it into like a 3D physical volume. So I'm gonna select the curve, and then in the command bar, I'm gonna write extrude curve. And then I'm gonna pull it up, and I'm gonna say that the floor plate is about 1 foot. And that creates a 3D volume. Oops, I'm on the wrong layer. I'm gonna set these again to floor plate, and then make sure that I'm on the right layer here. So you know that you're on the right layer when there's that little check mark. Sometimes I'll like click on default or like another layer, and it's highlighted in blue, so then I think that I'm on that layer, but I'm actually not. So now that my layers are correct, you can kind of see that this is a volume, like a box. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna actually change my view. Right now it's in wireframe, so that's why you can see all those little lines, but I'm gonna change it to shaded so that I can kind of see it a little bit better. There's also other views such as like rendered or ghosted. This one's kind of fun, artistic. I think it looks like a paper. Oh, it's gonna load. Oh, yeah. It kind of looks like you drew it on paper, which is kind of fun. But like not that useful. Okay, so we have our first floor plate. So now I'm just gonna copy and paste it and then move it up. Control C, Control V, and it just stays right in place. And I'm going to move it up using, so there's a few ways to move things. You can use the move command, but you can also just use the gumball transform, which is this little like axis looking thing. I'm going to click the blue arrow and I'm going to move it up 12 feet. So I figured that the first floor of the building, can I move that again? No, I didn't. Okay. I figured that the first floor of the building is probably about 12 feet tall. We're not going to focus too much on the inside of the building, but just to give an idea. So now I'm going to use a different command. You could continue to copy and paste it and do the same thing to move it up. But I'm actually going to array it using the command array. So number in the X direction is going to be 0 because we're just moving things up. Oh, shoot, not 0, my bad. Array. Number in the X direction will be 1. Number in the Y direction is also going to be 1. And then number in the Z direction. So this is now the second floor. I believe there's 8 floors in Bayan. So we're going to do 6. And then it says Z spacing, our first reference point. I'm going to put 10 feet. Press enter to accept. And then we have our floors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I'm missing 1. Can't do math. That's 10 feet. So now we have all of our floors. Is everyone good so far? Oh, there's a chat. Let me check. Oh, okay. It's Selena. She came in to check that we were recording. So now we're going to do the exterior wall. So I'm just going to make another layer for that. And again, change the colors. There we go. Now I'm going to go into the top view. Zoom all the way out. Again, I'm going to change my view to shaded just so I can kind of see things a bit better. And I'm going to go to the same rectangle command. You can also just put in rectangle. The same thing. And I'm going to draw just the shape of the building. And then I'm going to go back to perspective, and I can see that it's on the top of the building. So I'm going to go ahead and move this back down using the move command. And I'm just going to click where I want to move it from, and then where I want to move it to. So I'm going to move it down to the base of the building. Then I'm going to offset that line. Oh, also, if you can see, where I'm clicking is kind of like ambiguous, where they're not really like sure where I'm clicking, this kind of little menu will pop up, and then you can select what you want to select. So now I'm going to offset this line so that I'm giving the wall some thickness. So I'm going to say offset. And then I'm going to indicate, you can kind of see, you can indicate inwards or outwards. And I'm going to indicate to offset outwards by 1 foot. Because I think an exterior wall is probably like a foot. So now you can see we have 2 lines. We have the original line and the offsetted line like this. And I'm going to extrude it all the way to the top of the building. Actually, let me do some math really quick. Sometimes that's going to be 82 feet. So I'm going to go extrude curve, split up 82 feet. So like that. And you can see it creates a solid that has, it's not kind of just like 2 single lines, it's a like actual volume or solid. It just looks like that. And then for the roof, I'm going to create that same line outside to outside. And I'm going to extrude that one also a foot. Looks like that. Pretty simple so far. Yeah, there's like kind of a, I think it's probably like a mechanical unit on the top of the building. But it's kind of like a little bit smaller, and then there's like those solar panels on top. So I'm going to create the massing for that. Again, creating a new layer, and I'm going to call it the mechanical unit. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing, create a rectangle, offset it, maybe like 4 feet. That looks too small. 10 feet. I think we can do more. Maybe like 12 feet. I'm looking at what my hole looks like. I'm just pulling it up on Google so I can look at the image. I'm gonna say that it's about 10 feet. I'm just gonna go ahead and extrude it 10 feet. That's the mechanical box. Is everyone good so far? Or do we need to review anything? Good? Okay, cool. So outside of band, there's kind of that like grid, you know, that kind of surrounds the windows. So we're going to go ahead and create that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another layer called grid. And then make sure I'm on the right layer. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a sort of box or a rectangle so that I can set up my grid. Also, quick note at the bottom here, these are all of my snaps. So I set my snaps to end, near, middle, perpendicular, tangent. You can do more. I just find that these work for me. And that helps make sure just everything is connected and aligned and precise. And it makes everything a lot easier. Now I'm gonna go ahead and click this curve. This is a polyline. So I just click this little thing here. There's a bunch of different lines you can use. You can do a single line, polyline, all sorts of stuff. A polyline is basically just a single line with multiple segments. And it looks like this. And Rhino calls polylines curves, but there's also like actual curves over here. And you can, again, there's like a bunch of different ways you can make curves, but those make kind of splines. Okay. So now I'm going to select this and I'm going to explode it. And exploding just kind of separates everything into its individual components. So now you can see all of the curve, instead of one kind of closed rectangle, I have 4 separate curves. So now I'm going to show you guys again kind of a similar method, or I'm going to show you guys 2 different methods of how to create the grid. So the first one, I'm going to divide this curve, and I'm going to divide it by the number of segments. So I'm going to say, actually, wait, the first floor is taller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the first floor, which is 12 feet. And then I'm going to draw a line from the 12 feet to the very top. So then I'm going to divide this one. I'm going to select this curve. I'm going to go divide, and then you can see every time you run a command, it just prompts you. So it's pretty like, it's, I wouldn't say easy, but like if you forget exactly how a command works, you can just kind of be prompted. So I'm going to divide it into 7 segments. Well, I did not need to write segments, just 7. And that's going to correspond with our floors, if you can see. Yeah, I'm going to turn that back on. Oh, by the way, as you can see, to kind of turn the view of things on and off, we just click this light bulb, and then to lock and unlock layers, use this little guy on the side. Okay, cool. So now to create the grid one way, this way is like not the most efficient, kind of simple and easy. I'm going to take this line that I created from the rectangle before, and I'm just going to copy it from this point, and I'm just going to I'm just going to snap it onto these points. Like so. So that's kind of like one way of doing things, and it's fine for like when there's not that many things. Actually, wait, I'm gonna undo that really quick because I just noticed my point snap wasn't on, and that's why I was getting kind of finicky. So I'll do that again, copy, and now you can see it'll snap to the point. Sorry, I didn't notice that before. So yeah, copying things works pretty well when there's just a few. It's pretty fast, but when you want to do things a little more efficiently, a little quicker, maybe there's more. There are easier ways to do it, which I'll show you guys right now. We're just going to array the curve. So we're going to take this curve, that's the entire length of the building, and I'm going to say array curve. And so array curve will array whatever geometry you have along a curve. So when it says select path curves, I want it to array along this curve here. And then you can array by number of items. You can also array by distance or orientation. I usually do it by distance or by number of items. So looking at my hall, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There's maybe like 15 vertically. So I'm going to say 15. And then it works that way. And then just press enter to accept. And so now we have our grid set up. Is everyone good so far? Or Are there any questions? Anything you'd like me to review? Good. Okay, cool. So this really is just going to be kind of like the basis for me to kind of create the like kind of protrusions on my hull. So I'm going to create a new layer for the actual kind of like beams and columns. Some of the colors are really pretty, like this lavender or this pink. So we're going to create this beams and columns now. I'm going to say that looking at the image, and also when I was walking past it today, it looked like they're about maybe like 1 foot and 8 inches, something like that. So back to the rectangle command, I'm just going to put 1 foot by 8 inches. And then I'm going to select it like this. And then I'm just going to do the same thing, extrude curve up to the top. What do you guys think? Too small? Good enough? I think it's okay, but I think I want it to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to say maybe it's about 1.5 feet. So I'm just going to go 1.5 feet. This colors are very good. I'm going to change the color actually. I can't really see it very well. I'll change it to this purple. Yeah, that's a little better. So I want to make it a little bit bigger, so I'll use the scale command. And so I'm just going to scale, like this is the original length, and then I'm going to extend it to the length I want it to be, like that. I think that looks pretty good in terms of height and width, but as you can see, it went like a little bit too tall. So instead of just a normal scale, I'm going to use scale 2D. I'm going to select the object to scale, do the same thing. And then you can see it just scales in the X and Y direction and not the Z direction as well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy them, and I'm going to copy it from the midpoint and just line it up with my grid. Again, you could array these. I think it's not too bad. There's not too many items. So I'm just going to go ahead like that. And then for that one on the end, I'm going to copy it from the end of the beam over. So that looks pretty good, I think. Now do it in the 6:30. What time is this? 6:30? Yeah, okay. I'm going to do it in the other direction. So I noticed that the first floor doesn't, or not the first floor, sorry. What was that? 1, 2, 3. The fourth floor doesn't really have any going horizontally, so I'm going to skip that one. But I'll do it for the remaining floors. And the first floor doesn't as well, because it's the first floor. Minimize. Okay. And I think I'm just going to use the same measurement. So what I'm going to do is, because I don't know exactly the width of this, because I don't want to do the math to figure it out, and I just scaled it. What I'll do is I'll take the rectangle command again. I'll go like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it so that it's oriented the correct way. And so usually when you rotate things, if you just use the rotate command, what it'll do is it'll rotate along the XY plane. But if you do rotate 3D, you can select the axis of the rotation, and then you can rotate it in different ways. So I'm going to rotate it this way, so it's standing up. And then I'm going to do a normal rotation this way. Okay. Yeah, that's more like that. Actually, I'm gonna change this so I split up the beams in the columns. So this one will be columns, and then I'll do another one for beams. I'll do this in red. Change this layer. And then I'm gonna turn off columns just so I can see a little bit better. Put this guy over here. Like that. Straight the curve this way to the end, and then copy it again. That's the second floor. We said that the third floor had one, the fourth one didn't, and then the rest had them. Yes. And then that one should copy again from the edge so it's not sticking out. And then in the end, we have a grid that kind of looks like this. Looks like my hall a little bit, I think. My hall's a pretty simple building. I picked it because it'd be easy to to model. So then we're gonna make windows. Actually, maybe I'll take a break here, or a little stop and check in. Is everyone doing all right? Any questions? Good. Oh my God, a perfect hand signal. Nice. So now we're going to do windows. There's a few different ways to do windows. You can actually make like the hole in the building. So that's really useful when it comes to rendering. But if you're just drawing, you can kind of just do the windows in like line work and then kind of put it onto the building. So I'll show you both. And I'll show you guys multiple ways of doing everything. So let's say windows. I'm going to make these. What color should I do windows? Maybe green. Let's do green. Okay. So I don't really know how big these frames are. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a rectangle as a sort of like reference for myself. Actually, I won't use the rectangle. The thing with the rectangle command that kind of irks me personally, but it's also kind of like a blessing. Okay, so when you do the rectangle, it creates it flat, like parallel to the XY plane, which is really nice because sometimes it's like kind of, you don't want it to be like wonky, but sometimes if I want to make a rectangle the other way, then it's like, I don't know, whatever. So I'm just going to do lines instead of a polyline to create that reference for myself. And I'm just going to drag this out and I'm going to rotate it 3D. So that's a little bit easier for me to draw the window. Then I'm going to go into top view. And you can see this object is kind of small in comparison to the building. So sometimes if it's like super far away for whatever reason, you're like, oh, like where did my geometry go? So what you can do is you can go to your layers, right click, and then go select objects, and then it highlights it for you. And then you can move it around either back and forth, but then you can also run zoom select, which is just ZS, and it zooms into that object for you. You can also, a similar command is zoom extends. Oops. Said E, I think. And that zooms into all of your geometry, as you can see. Okay, back to the window. So the band window, or sorry, not the band, the My Hall windows look, they're kind of rectangular, and then they have a frame kind of to the side. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna offset it by 2 inches to get the frame, and then I'm gonna say that it looks something like that. I think that's like the pattern of the window. So I'm going to offset again this way and this way. But I don't want these little lines in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything, and then I'm going to run trim. And then trim will allow me to kind of like split and delete lines at their intersection. So you can kind of see here that's letting me to do that. Trim is basically like, it's kind of like 2-in-1. So for example, I could take this curve and I could run split to split the curve up, and I could say, I want these two lines to be my splitting objects. Then I'll split the curve into 3 different things, and I could delete this. But as you can tell, it's a lot faster to just do trim. Then you can kind of see, not that one. That one's a full curve, but this one, this one, and this one, they're all separate curves now. So I'm just going to select everything and do join. And so now I have 3 closed curves. But they're still separate. So to make things a little bit easier, I'm going to say group, and that will group all of the curves together like this. To ungroup, you can just select and go ungroup, which is useful because usually you group things and then you do a bunch of commands and then you want to ungroup, and you can't just like Control Z all the way back to before it was grouped. So you have to ungroup, but I'm going to keep mine grouped like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and put that on the building. So I'm going to go rotate 3D. What's nice about Rhino too is that, as you can see, it kind of remembers the commands I use a lot. So I use rotate 3D a lot. So it's already highlighted. So I can just hit enter and it'll go to rotate 3D for me. Over here. This guy over here. And then over here. It's kind of the wrong way. I wanted it to be the other way. Let's get that. I'm just going to flip this around. Go ungroup. Should I do this? Here's what I'll do. I'm going to extend things the other way. So I'm going to click. I'm going to explode these into their individual lines. And then I'm going to click this one at the bottom and I'm going to click extend. So that's setting what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these lines and I'm going to extend them down this way. And then I'll trim off this side so that the window pattern looks like that instead of like this. So I'm going to run the extend command. And then it's going to ask you to indicate what the boundary is. So I'm going to say that this is the boundary. Press enter. And then I'm going to select my curves to extend. So that one and that one. And then press enter again. Then I'm going to go ahead and trim these so that they look the way I want them to. And then you can see that, hold up, let me zoom in. You can see that there's a little hole where this is, where there used to be kind of this frame. So there's 2 ways you can kind of fix that. You can select the point of the curve and move it like that. You can also extend like we did before, or it should work to run close curve. Sometimes you can run close curve and it'll just close it up, but sometimes it'll close in a way that you don't want it to close, which is like, you know, it happens. The computer isn't that smart sometimes. Okay, so that's my window. I'm gonna go join, and then I'm gonna group them, and then I'm gonna move them. Select. Cool. So this will work well for a drawing. But for rendering, you might want it to kind of be open, to open the window. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this over to show you guys how to create a window, like a cutout, basically. So I'm going to ungroup this. And then I don't need this outside here, so I'm just going to delete it. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys 3 different ways of making a window. The first one is using the command make hole. Make hole. So you're going to select a closed curve, closed and planar. Enter, and then you're going to select the surface that you want to cut. So for me, that's this blue one. And then depth point. So if I go this way, it's not going to cut into anything. If I go this way, I'll cut into this wall here. If I go this way, I'll cut through this wall and the next wall. So I'm just going to go somewhere in the middle. As you can see, it made a hole. And it also closed up the blue surface. So that's one way. Works pretty well. Don't mind it. Another way is to use Boolean commands. So Boolean commands work, they're just different kind of operations that you can do with solids. So I'm going to go ahead and extrude this curve like this to give it a little bit of thickness. Doesn't really matter how much for what we're doing. It's really long, but it'll work. And then I'm going to move it over this way. And I'm going to run Boolean Split. So I want to split this blue surface, the exterior wall, and then I want to cut it using this extrusion. So I'm just going to select that. And then what I need to do is delete that green extrusion. And then as you can see, you have the surface and the like basically you split the surface into 2 parts, the part that was where the extrusion was, and then the rest of the surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete that, and that creates a window as well. The final way that you guys can create, well, there's many more, but the final way I'm going to show you guys is to extrude the curve. But then instead of Boolean Split, I'm going to use Boolean Difference. So I guess kind of an analogy would be Boolean Difference is like split, and trim, like Boolean Difference is to split, Boolean Split as trim is to split. Does that make sense? I feel like that didn't make sense. That's okay. So I'm going to run Boolean Difference, select surfaces. Oops, Boolean Difference. I'm going to select the surface that I want to cut, and then I'm going to select the poly surface that I want to remove. And then as you can see, it deletes both the thing that I wanted to cut and the thing that I cut with. So yeah, it looks like that. Do you guys have any questions? Oh, there's one in the chat. Oh. Can you create a surface based on closed curve or points? You can't create a surface based off of points. Well, kind of. Okay, so like if you have a point, you can't create a surface from it, but there's many different ways that you can create a surface. So one way is to create kind of a rectangle. this is a closed curve. You kind of need it to be a closed curve, otherwise it doesn't really know what the boundaries of the surface is. So you can create a rectangle or whatever. You can also create a circle. Rectangle, circle, ellipse, they all work the same way. They're just different shapes, right? And then you can run planar surface, and that'll create a surface that's flat within the bounds of the curve. You can also do surface from 3 or 4 points. And this one you can kind of just do randomly. That was planar surface. You can also do surface from like edge curves. I wonder if this will work. Go with this. Split. I haven't tried this actually. Let's see. So let's say I have that curve, this curve. I can do surface from surface from 2 or 3 or 4 edge curves, and I can just select those 2 curves, and that'll create a surface as well. So yeah, all the different ways you can create a surface are in here. And there's a lot of fancy ones. This one's extrude, which is what we were doing before, but that's more of a volume. Yeah, does that answer your question? Yeah, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and delete these now. So yeah, that's kind of what we have so far. I realize this window doesn't, this like little inside thing is smaller than this one. So we have a kind of weird frame. That's okay. It is 7 o'clock, so I think I'll talk about drawings a little bit. Let me just stop my share and then I'll show again so that you guys can see this little diagram. Okay, so you guys probably know this, or you might not, but there's a bunch of different types of architectural drawings or engineering drawings that you can do. This is like a pretty simple house, but an elevation is just kind of like the front view you see from the street. It's a 2D projection, so there's no perspective. There's sections, so it's kind of like cutting through the building, and you can kind of see there's been like a hatch applied, and that just shows where the building has been cut through. A floor plan is similar to a section. It's just a cut made the other way, so parallel to the ground, and it shows the layout of rooms and things. And then there's also axonometric and isometric drawings, and it's a whole bunch of different types of drawings. You could do like a plan oblique or like an elevation oblique. I personally really like isos. One, because in an isometric, all of your sides are like 1 to 1 to 1. But also they're just so easy to do in Rhino. And I'll show you guys how. Okay, so let's say we're not gonna model the rest of the building because it's pretty standard. Let's create an elevation, a plan, and an isometric. So we'll start with the elevation. I'm just gonna select everything here. I'm gonna unlock my column so that those are selected too. And then I'm gonna go to the front view. I'm going to non-shade it again, just so we can see what we're looking at. That's not the side we modeled. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this. So it's at the front. These, yeah, that's what we modeled. So now that this is in the front, I'm going to select everything and I'm going to run make 2D. Make 2D is probably like the best command that Rhino has ever made. I'm going to call it an elevation. So basically what happens is Rhino looks at your viewport and it traces over all of the lines that it sees to create like a 2D drawing from a 3D model. And so there's a whole bunch of options. You can, well, first of all, you can name your layer, but then you can also show hidden lines, so like what's behind just the front, all sorts of stuff. I always maintain source layers so that all of these layers show up under the make 2D. Yeah. So you click OK, and then you can see it showed up over here. So if I go into top view, zoom select, you can see that's created an elevation of the building. And then you can see here, this is your make 2D layer, and it has all of the source layers still there. So yeah, that's an elevation. You can also do the same thing for a plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy my building over so that I have like the original building, and then I have some buildings that I can kind of manipulate for getting the drawings that I want. So for a plan, what I like to do is I just draw a rectangle. I make a planar surface. Let's see, this thing is already at the bottom. Usually plans are taken about 1.5 meters above the floor, because that's kind of generally like how tall people are, like what people see. So I'm going to put 1.6 meters. I'm just going to move it up. Delete that curve. I'm going to select the building, and then I'm going to, oh, when you're selecting, if you drag bottom right to top left, you select everything that your mouse kind of touches. Whereas if you select top left to bottom right, you have to drag over the whole object for it to select. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I'm going to select the object like this, and then I'm going to deselect the plane by holding down Control and clicking the plane. And then I'm going to go split. I'm going to use my plane as a cutting object. Then from the front view, I'm going to select everything above that plane and delete it. And then I'm going to delete the plane as well. And this will give me my floor plan. There's nothing really interesting about it because we didn't do the inside. But what you'll notice is that when I split things, these geometries, they're not, there's no like plane on the top, they're open. So what you can do is you can select them, and then you can run cap, and it'll cap the top of the object. Then same idea, select everything, go to top view, make 2D, plan, and that creates your plan. You can see it's overlapping, just move it over like that. Also, if you wanted to be like lazy, which like fair enough, an easy way, because we didn't model the other side, would be to select all of these guys, go mirror, and then find the middle of the building, and then just mirror it on the other side, because my house is pretty symmetrical, so these guys are probably on that side too. Sections. Okay, so sections are kind of fun. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create, so I could really just like do the same thing, create a plane, cut through it the other way. But sometimes when the building is more complex, you want to kind of see all of the different versions you can get. So it's super helpful to use a clipping plane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this little button and I'm going to go restore. And then in my front view, I'm going to, you can see it's like selected. I'm going to go clipping plane. I'm just going to create a rectangle. You can kind of see here what that looks like. And then you can see in the front view, you can see in the perspective where I'm moving the clipping plane. And you can see, moved it up. You can see kind of the section that it creates in the front. And then so you can see what the section looks like. Let's say I kind of like it about there. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to create a line where I like my section. I'm going to delete the clipping plane because I don't need it anymore. I'm going to go down over to perspective. I'm going to extrude this line to create a plane. You can use this little circle on the gumball transform to create the plane. And then I'm just going to do the same thing as I did with the plan. Selecting it all, deselecting the plane. Go into top view when you do this. Split, plane objects, cut. Delete one side, delete the cutting plane. Go back into front view, make 2D, section. And again, it makes a drawing for you, like so. Pretty basic. And then now we'll do an isometric. So I'm just going to select the building. And then in this little arrow, remember how we could set different views? So we could change like top to like, I don't know, we could change right to left and front to back, etc., etc. Go into perspective, set view, isometric, and then you can pick a corner you want. So this one doesn't have too much going on. Maybe I want to set the view to the southeast corner. That's a little bit more interesting. Maybe I'll set it southwest. I kind of like the southwest. So this is my isometric. Again, make 2D, isometric. And now you have an isometric shot like that. Yeah, these guys are pretty clean because it's a pretty simple building. This is a little bit more messy, just in the sense that, you know, kind of you see all these little lines where the beams and columns intersect. So you can always go trim and then just kind of clean those lines up like that. Kind of takes a while, but not too bad. And then you have a nice clean drawing. And then usually what I do is after I'm in Rhino, I'll select, or once I'm done in Rhino, once I've made my drawings, I'll select everything and then go File, Export Selected. And then I'll save it as an Illustrator file, actually. Say like, name it whatever. Call this my home. Save, and then I can indicate what I want the scale to be. So maybe I want it to be, let me see, kind of a big building. Maybe I want it to be 1 to 250. So that would be 1 millimeter is equal to 0.004 millimeters. And then I just say, okay. And that would save the drawing. Again, anything that you can do in kind of like 3D, you can do in 2D as well. So maybe like if I just, sometimes it's just easier to draw things than it is to model. So I can go ahead and just like copy all these guys. I could also array them, as we were talking about before. But yeah, sometimes it's just easier to draw in 2D than it is to model. You kind of just have to think about what's easiest, what's most efficient. Yeah. That's about it for me for the tutorial. Do you guys have any questions or anything? If not, we can also review, maybe there might be some commands that, oh, there are questions. Okay, wait, let me answer the questions first. Clipping plane is similar to section planes in SketchUp. I actually haven't used SketchUp before, but it sounds like it would be the same. Yeah. Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you guys don't have any other specific, yeah, I want to learn SketchUp. I heard it's pretty like efficient, pretty good. Yeah, SketchUp is easy. Yeah. We can also go over some of the Rhino commands in the sheet that I compiled for you guys. Let me see. Maybe I'll stop. No, I won't stop recording. That's okay. Yeah, some pretty basic things. Point is just this little guy. You can put a point wherever you want. Polyline, we talked about that. It kind of just creates a polyline however you want it to be. Curve looks like this. You can do a curve through control points. As you can see, it kind of creates a curve from the points I did. Or I find it also super helpful to do curve interpolate points, and then there will be like a curve through the points that you draw. Distance. We didn't do distance, but distance basically tells you the distance of things, like this. And then the distance will just come up here in this little feedback thing. If it's just a curve, explode it. You can also just use that to not explode. Oh, that's okay. You can also just, if it's just a curve, you can put in like, then it works the same. Let me see. Rectangle, we did that. Move, copy, offset, rotate, mirror, scale, split, trim, extend, array, join, group, surface, blah, blah, blah. Oh, this is also useful. If you just want to hide an object for whatever reason, maybe it's easier to see, but you need like other objects in that layer to be like shown, you can do hide, and then that hides things, and then the opposite is show. Similarly, if you want to lock an object, but you don't want to lock the whole layer, you can just go lock, and that'll lock the object so it's uneditable, and you can unlock, and it'll unlock all the objects that you previously locked. Yeah, that's about it, I guess, for basic command. Do you guys have any other questions? I'll stop the recording now.